Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. Happy to have you on there. Happy to have you listening and everything. I got three amazing people. They just rocked out an amazing episode just on with it comes to property management, how investors can work with our property manager, how can they be more successful, how they can set the property managers up to be successful. Right now, I want to dig into a little bit of their businesses and what's going on with them. And I chose these three, number one, because I just have a lot of respect for these three people, enjoy talking to them. We could probably just sit here for 6 hours and just record this and we'd have some great content for podcasts between the four of us and stuff. But I really respect them. And I honestly, and I told them before, is I kind of view them as in different spots within property management. And that's why I wanted to have them on here. So we have Elisha Drake, who was managing 600 doors. And as she shared in the last episode, she was kind of going against her own processes and going against her own systems. That kind of burned her out a little bit. And now she's removed herself from that. She's managed on her own, so she has some expertise and she has a lot of insights with that. And she's kind of phased herself out of that property management business. And we have Sterling Davis, who is kind of in that succession phase for himself. He's still the owner. He's still overseeing. He's still the CEO of Ethosity, but he's relying on his team to do a lot of things for him. And he doesn't want to mess up their processes and systems. When he gets involved, that's when he's the bottleneck. And sometimes we all know how that works. And then we have Joe Atha, who has an amazing business, amazing systems and processes behind what he and PMI do. And I kind of view Joe as being that person that's doing a great job of being in the thick of it, leading his team, leading his investors, and really helping them out. So I kind of chose them because they're in different spots of their business. And that's what I want to dig into on this episode of number one, within property management of how that business works, how it operates, but then how they were able to be successful with what they were doing. And guys, I want to start with this first question, kind of get your insights on this. And you guys all might be kind of on the same page of this. We'll see how close you are in this answer. But this first question I have for you is that person that goes from managing their own properties, because everybody kind of thinks they can start off by doing that a little bit of hey, I can manage my own properties. What's that kind of that magic number of going back to hey, I can manage, this is how many properties I can manage on my own. Okay, now I need a property manager. What is that kind of magic number that you really want to maybe start to turn over a property manager, or you want to start building a business off of kind of what you're doing? So Elisha, do you have a set number or kind of a number in your mind of what that really is for a person out there?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person, honestly.
Yeah.
I have had people who had up to 10 properties. And they were doing their own property management and reached out to me, shortly after as they were acquiring some more. And then I've had some that reached out after one and they said, I am not doing this anymore. I don't want to manage this maintenance and whatever else, I think it also depends on, are they local? I have a lot of local investors that use me because I have large portfolios. So if they're local, they could do quite a bit more actually than they could if they're out of state, because they can drive to their properties. They probably have a lot more contacts and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it varies. I would say, around 10 for some of those local folks. They decided they're ready to kind of move on to working on the business instead of in the business.
Yeah. So Joe, how about you with that one?
Man, I really think it's until you feel the stress and the pressure of the business is interfering with the rest of your life. Yeah. So for some people that might be one or two, for some it might be 10. A lot of that depends on, your full-time job. If you're working full-time and you've got a family and you want to spend time with them, and this is for some extra cash flow and you're really building it as a retirement plan, man, you shouldn't have any that you try and manage yourself. Yeah. If you're going part-time and wanting to work 20 or 30 hours a week at it, I think you can probably do 10 on your own. The bigger time suck is learning everything that you need to learn to do property management effectively, right? Because it's not about going and getting one work order done or getting a lease signed. It's about what should go in that lease and all the protections that you should have. Yeah. In that lease.
I love that. You talk to a lot of people that have gone from kind of managing on their own to, they wanted to turn it into a business or turn it into to a property manager. It's always interesting to hear oh yeah, I started off and my lease was 1 or 2 pages. And then you talk to them 2 years later, oh yeah, my lease is 17 pages. And that's Yep, you got it. You understand it. So, Sterling, I'm going to change your question a little bit here. Of like, what was that number for you when you were managing kind of properties on your own? Then you realized, like, hey, I think I can do this for other people. I'm going to turn this into a business for myself.
Yeah, that's a great
You
question.
can follow it up with why you did that.
Yeah. Like the answer should be freaking one. Like I should have turned it over on item one, but I didn't. Right? Like I'm here. But truly, I think the answer for me is four. I think outside of once you go to like five, then it becomes a business, and you start making those business decisions. Like you before five, and you start talking about one or two, you can start having people. You can kind of discriminate to a certain degree when it comes down to who's in your house and who's not in your house. But then once you start getting in those larger numbers of 5, 6, 7, 8, you can't discriminate anymore, right? Like you have to run it like a business by law. So for me, I realized early on that I could run this business, and there was a need and desire for what I was doing because I ran it like a business. But I realized after like, I think my sixth house, I was like, yeah, I need to run this like a business. I need to really hone in on processes. I looked at different franchise models through PMI and through Real and decided to go on my own. But I think, truly after four, you need to probably start looking at some third party or something with it.
Yeah. So Sterling, with that, let me ask you this is like, as you decide to, hey, I'm going to turn this into a business and I'm going to grow this thing and stuff like that, what was like kind of in your mind, what's that first hire that somebody does want to like, hey, they're managing on their own and their portfolio is starting to grow. What's one of those first hires they should maybe think about doing, and it's going to be different probably based off your personality, what you're good at, what you like doing and things like that. But what was your kind of first hire, or, what would you recommend that first hire being?
Yeah, so I'm a visionary. That's who I am. I've been a sales before property management. I was a sales director. I was, I was unemployable. Everybody knows the story, right? But it centered around sales. So my first one, if you read the book's Traction, was more finding the integrator to be able to help me with it. And I kind of, because I'm very self-aware, I devalued even what I did. I looked at it, was like, man, I'm terrible at the administrative part of this business. Like, I need somebody to do that. And if I do that, we're going to be great. So for me, it was very important to get somebody that can help me on the administrative side. Then when we got the person on the administrative side, I realized it was like, whoa, we need a balance to that administrator with somebody that can help on the people side of the business, right? Yep. So I think it's just very important to kind of like understand, inside of property management, I think there's a different style to run a business at 100 doors. I think there's a different style when you get to like 300, and then I think the next one is 500 plus to 1,000. And each one of those, like we've been up to, I think 650 after David Mowdy and all that. So that was a different rodeo than what I was dealing with at 300 doors, right? So I think it's just very important to be able to understand what those things are, one. But two, financially, I think that's the thing that you don't get with not having a franchise that's there to support you. We learn by trial by fire, right? Like Joe had somebody in his organization that can kind of guide him at 600 doors to be like, all right, Joe, this is what you should expect at 600 doors, right? When you're not that, you kind of are trial by fire, like, to a certain degree. And you have to make sure that whatever got you there could be the same thing that kills you. Like what got us at 100 doors was people and personalities. That would be the same thing that kills us at 300 doors, because now it's process and procedures. So it's just very important to kind of understand what that next level is going to be inside your business.
Yeah. So Joe, let's touch on that a little bit. If you guys, because you come from PMI that has a system, they're nationwide, they do a lot of things, and they have those processes and stuff in place. When it came to that first hire or first people that you're bringing on, did they kind of tell you like, hey, when you get to 20 doors, you need to bring this person on, or did they have that in place for you, or did you have to figure that out, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah, so we had some pretty good guidelines that were published by the franchise, but as business models continue to evolve in property management, I mean, even in the 5 years that I've been in the PMI franchise, it's changed significantly. So today, your first 2-3 hires are virtual assistants. You know, as a solo property manager, if you're starting up and you get your first 10, 15, 20 doors, you're starting to very quickly identify the tasks that are routine that somebody else can do for you. And you're using a system like we use Process Street to delegate and follow up on those tasks and get those off of your plate as quickly as possible so you can focus on revenue generating tasks and strategy as you first grow the business.
Yeah, that's great advice right there, man. Really appreciate that. Elisha, for you, I know a lot of times when people are starting to grow their portfolio or starting to bring on doors and they're growing their business, a lot of it, what turns into is like, wow, I just don't have the time to do what I need to do or what I like doing, or even the things that I'm good at. How did you navigate that of like being able to bring people on to just free up your time to do the stuff that you needed to be doing and really leading that kind of business?
Yeah, so I did a little bit different approach. I actually brought on W-2 employees. And I did that just simply because I wanted to make sure that I had complete control over when they needed to be in the office and there wasn't any deviation from that. So we could operate like my corporate world in property management. So I came from corporate property management, working in very large apartment communities, and I liked that style. I still think that that style is a great style for property management, and it's just what I implemented in my company. So I actually my first hire was a property manager. So I was actually opposite of Sterling. I was very strong on the admin side and probably, quite frankly, had trouble giving that up. So I kept that admin probably longer than I should have. But then I gave up more of the tasks of the tenant communications and things over to a property manager who could then do move-ins and leases and tenant relations and things like that. So that was the area that I felt like I could basically give to someone else because, you know, I was a little bit different. I think I was really strong on the admin and the owner side, but the tenants was definitely something I thought someone else with a little softer personality.
So
that might be better.
Yeah. So, and I love that contrast to kind of like a little bit of what everybody said right there. And what I'm going to look at and kind of pull out from that is, from all three of you, is really what you should be doing is going through an activity where you can write down, hey, what are the things that you're good at and what are the things that you like doing? Keep doing those things. And then the things that you don't like doing or you're not good at, those are the things that you're hiring for. Okay. If you're not good at the admin stuff or things like that, you're going to bring on a virtual assistant. You're going to bring on an integrator or an operations person. If you are good at those things, you need to bring on somebody that has the personality or the face or that property manager that's going to be communicating with people. So what do you need is really what it comes down to. It's not going to be a one answer thing that fits everybody out there. That just goes for everybody in business. With that too, I would throw in even kind of along with this first hire is, Sterling, you mentioned the book Traction, and Joe, you mentioned, the process streets and things like that. I think one of the first hires, not necessarily needs to be a person, but needs to be some type of an operating system. So what are you operating off of? Are you going through a business plan? Do you have something like Lucid Chart or Process Street that you can build processes? Do you have an Asana that you can put your systems in place or whatever it is? Do you have a communication tool like Slack or anything like that? Like those are also, I think, things that you need to make sure you're bringing on right away, which makes your just business run so much more efficiently as well. And sometimes that first hire might need to be a technology person or a systems person that can put that stuff in place for you. Because sometimes as entrepreneurs, we might not have that background and know what to do with that. So one of the other things I know is a huge thing when it comes along with even just hires and having people on your team is your team of contractors. Whether you are connected with subcontractors or you have a GC on your own team or things like that. I know relationships with contractors are just huge when in the property management world. So Joe, how do you go about building relationships with contractors, finding contractors? I feel like everybody in the investor world is always like, man, I need a better contractor. I need more contractors. I need to find when you're always going through that, and somebody that might be good for you might not work well for Elisha or whatever it may be. But what are some tips you have for people that are doing property management, that are building relationships with contractors out there?
Yeah. So I think for me, you build partnerships with your contractors. Don't treat your contractor as a commodity or an adversary. You build a partnership with them. And we had several, right off the bat that we met through Syria and some different groups, that, we just aligned very well in our vision and what we wanted to accomplish in the market as we were doing turnovers, doing construction, rehab, full rehabs, those things. And we appreciated the checks and balances that each other had. As a property manager, I have to come inspect your work before I pay you. But for a contractor, we guarantee that our contractors are going to get paid for every job, and that they're not going to go do this work and then have somebody not pay them or have to struggle with accounts receivable. So there's very much a give and take there. And you find somebody that's aligned with the same, goals that you have for your organization, and you build a partnership, and that's how you're successful long-term with contractors.
Yeah. I think that's great advice too. And I know when I'm ever bringing on, looking at partners or contractors or anything like that, when it comes to something, I'm not going to find the person that fits me right now. I want to find the person that fits me where I want to go. And that person that maybe that's somebody that does want to grow with you or whatever it may be, but find that person of that's going to take you that next step of where you want to be. Makes a huge difference in the world. But looking at it as a partnership, not just hey, this is the person that works for me or does this, makes a huge difference. So Elisha, how about that? Do you have anything else to add on that of just relationships with contractors, how to build those and how to go about those?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that he said. I actually ran into a contractor that I personally use right now on my projects. We met at a car show, and it was just one of those things that it's just hey, I invest in real estate. He invested in real estate. We happen to invest in the same town. And we got to talking, and we actually built that relationship. I actually didn't use him as a contractor. We just built that relationship, talked about our investments, and he was doing work on his own properties. And so I ended up saying, hey, you want to branch out and work on mine as well? And, and it's been a fantastic thing. He's actually working on, my projects now and things. So yeah, I think that relationship piece is great. That's where it starts for sure. And building that trust, and in the small things, like he said, just making sure that you're paying them quickly, and, you can count on them and they can count on you.
Yeah. Say also too, just that, it brings up a point of whatever you're doing, make sure you're talking about what you want to be doing as well. And we all know within real estate, if you talk to 3 people, one of them is going to be basically in real estate in some way, or know somebody in real estate, some kind of connection and stuff like that. So I always look at too, is always be looking for that next talent of, somebody that can, get you to where you're going. Might not be the people that can get you there, but always be looking for talent, always be looking for different contractors that, might need a shot at something. I think it goes a long way. And or you might make connections at a car show, or, whatever you may be doing, or a conversation at Syria or something. So it always happens. So Sterling, how about you with just building those relationships with contractors and what can kind of work from there? Do you have any other advice than what they already mentioned?
Well, I mean, I think on the property management side, what I see the misconception is, of course you can find it cheaper, right?
Yeah.
And I think people oftentimes don't understand because we're a small business. In any business, they might have access to Joe just off of a text message and call. So oftentimes they feel like because we're a small business, then we should do things on small levels. Seeing that we should work with guys or handyman and things like that. And what you're saying is absolutely correct, Brian, where we have to work with people of where we're going. Can I work with a guy? I need to work with people that can understand our capacity, right? In a given month, we have 50 work orders. So if I have to work with 50 different contractors, how efficient am I going to be? But if I can work with 5 different contractors, now I'm pretty efficient because I know all those 5 are going to do what they're supposed to be done. So I think as an investor, if you're looking at your property manager, I give them the analogy of this most of the time. If you look at a water heater, on the retail side, a water heater is going to be $1,200. a water heater only costs $500. So that's $700 in labor. And oftentimes people are like, well, how can I get that cheaper? When you start cutting people's labor, be concerned because that's how they feed their family. But I think, as a handyman, they probably could do that for $800 and $850. We get water heaters done for about $900 to $950, give or take, right? So is it retail? No, it's not retail. Is it handyman? No, it's not handyman. But I do know where he's going to be if he runs off with that water heater.
Yeah.
So I can't find him on Angie's list, but I know where to find him, right?
Yeah.
Like I know where his office is. So I think it's just important to understand that's the difference, though, is that we will not be working with the cheapest, but we will be working with, quality people. Patrick Grayson always says it's three things, right? Like you can have affordability, you can have time, you can have quality. Pick two, right? So, yeah.
Great advice right there. And speaking of advice, I want to kind of wrap up this second episode with you guys with one last question here. If you guys can go back to from what you know now to back when you started your property management company, what's some advice that you would give yourself? So Sterling, let's start with you on that, man. So you go back to that young guy that was a little too naive when he was starting this business and stuff like that. What's some advice that you could give yourself, man?
I think it's something that I would probably give every property manager that starts in our industry. Charge what you're supposed to charge. Put the fees in where you're supposed to have fees. Don't be the cheapest guy or gal in the business, right? It's a reason why PMIs work. It's a reason why real property managers work. But oftentimes when you're the new person in here, we try to be the most affordable, and that's the way that we gain business. But it's a terrible model because at the end of the day, it's like a growth model. So if I'm only charging, my management fees, which is $60, then what goes up is more doors mean more income, but it means more expenses as well. So then I'm kind of bottlenecking myself to not being able to grow with my investors. So that's oftentimes why you see property managers that can't give consistent service once they get to 200 doors, 300 doors, 400, because they can't afford to hire anybody. Yep. If I'm at 200 doors and the only thing I'm making from that 200 doors is $60, so at $60, I'm making $12,000 is the only thing that I'm making, then how do I make a salary? So I think investors need to understand just because we charge fees does not mean that we're trying to rip you off. It means in which that we need to be able to grow with you. And the way that we grow with you is charging you, kind of what we say, charging you for the services that we render. So then we can then, like for us, when we had, started growing, we were able to add, an admin for our maintenance or admin because we had a revenue generating part already in place.
Yeah. So great advice right there. Great advice. And your time is valuable and you need to charge what that is worth. So really important stuff. Joe, how about you? What's some of that advice if you look back to when you're getting started and you starting that, you bought that franchise and you bought into that and everything like that? What's some advice you give yourself, man?
Yeah, I think I'd tell myself that real estate is very opportunistic. You have to be ready to jump on an opportunity when you see it. And thinking that way when you start to build the business at the beginning, understand where opportunity can take you in 2, 3, and 5 years, and test the scalability of everything you start doing. Because there were some systems that I put in place that might have been great for 10 or 20 doors, but then I get up to 50 and I'm like, how do you keep track of 50 doors on a Google spreadsheet, So you test the scalability of everything you do so you don't have to redo it later. Because if you can't scale it up where you want to be in 5 years and take advantage of the opportunities that come your way, it's going to hinder your growth.
Yeah, as we talked about before, just making decisions and like kind of working with people that want to kind of grow as you grow and stuff. Same thing too. Are you putting in the money into the systems, or are you just buying the cheapest thing you can do right now, but it's only going to get you so far? Like, okay, well, I used this for a year. Now I need a whole new system and I'm going to buy it again. Buy what you want to grow into and really think of it that way. So that's good stuff. Elisha, how about you?
Yeah, I think for me, I would have been a little bit slower on growth. I think that I would have just, there was a point where I stopped taking doors, and I think that that should have happened a little bit sooner. I think that, there's a lot of excitement that comes with, growing your company and growing your staff and taking on, working with, a lot of the investors that you want to work with, and you don't want to say no because you want to work with those people and things like that. But there's a time where, you probably need to say no, and make sure that your systems and your staff and your processes are in place, and you feel really good about it before adding additional doors. So I think it's okay to say, I'm not taking clients at this time, check back with me.
Yeah. So I think that's really important. A term I really like is you need to be able to grow responsibly. So as you're growing your business, you need to be able to do it in a responsible manner for not just yourself, but also for everybody that's involved in that and things like that. So, and I realized too, like every time that you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So what is that going to be? Is that going to be a sacrifice for your business or yourself or your family or whatever it is, or even at the expense of your investors or things? But so always keep that in mind. But you guys, I really appreciate you. This is fantastic stuff. Really appreciate all your insights and all the value you provided on these last 2 episodes. So appreciate that. I do want to go around the horn real quick. And if Elisha, if somebody wants to reach out to you or hear more about your story, hear about more about what you're doing, or buy a property off of you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yes, it is Elisha at simplewholesaling.com, or you can call me, text me even, 317-796-1206.
Awesome. And Joe, how about you, man?
Sure. So email works really good for me. Joe at PMI Indy. It's PMIINDY.com. And man, right on my website, I've got a book a consultation button at the top. That gets you right to my schedule, and you can book a Zoom, you can book a phone call, any of those types of things. So
there you go. Book up his schedule. Pick his brain. He's got some good knowledge in there and stuff. So, Mr. Sterling, if somebody wants to reach out to you to get some more insight on Ethosity, what you guys are doing, how you guys are growing, or to just wish you a happy anniversary, or make sure that you took out the trash tonight for your wife, and make sure you're doing that for Melissa, how can they get in contact with you, my man?
Facebook is always great. So Sterling M. Davis Sr. is always a good tool to be able to utilize. Or my email at sdavis@ethositymanagement.com. That's ETHOSITY, management spelled out.com.
Good job. And if you hit him up on Facebook, you get to see it rant every now and then on there. So yeah, we had a good one yesterday. So it's all right. So with that, if you need anything from me, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am here to help you in whatever way I can. My email is brian@simplewholesaling.com. Like I said, I'm here to help. And with that, that's a wrap for this episode of the Indy Investor Pod. Really appreciate these guys for these last 2 episodes. And with that, we're out of here. And it's a wrap for this episode. And we'll see you guys next time. Take care.